Tomorrow will be the Hindu festival of Holi, and I want to wish all Guyanese a happy Holi. I hope everyone would enjoy the celebrations. Mr. Norton had a press conference recently, and he told some very tall stories. He said that since the last elections, the People's National Congress has had 10,000 new members. Mr. Norton should be writing fiction. He said that he is onboarded by the large number of people who have left the party, and he acknowledged that people will continue to leave the PNC, but he said that the members leaving would give him more breathing room. So clearly, the Congress Place was congested, and the mass exodus from the party that he's witnessed under his leadership is giving him more room to breathe. I think it was a rare acknowledgement of the truth that it's not more breathing room. It would allow him to conduct the divisive politics that he's accustomed to, and that he's unwilling to move away from, that is using race as the lens through which he sees everything. So he then persisted with the lie that there is a bloated list and it would be a recipe for post-election problems. So the veiled threat that is so common in his lexicon and in his speeches, that again he's accustomed to, was repeated in his most recent public appearances, I should say. We have dealt with this issue a million times before. I think he's trying to preach this to the unsuspecting, hardcore loyalists of the PNC who would believe this nonsense. And hopefully they will support him. He then says he's not bothered by, as I said before, he's not bothered by people leaving the party, but the reason they are leaving is, again, PPP bribing them because the PPP has a lot of money. Now, this is taking the fringe view that can come from the warped minds of some of the extremists and bringing it mainstream into the PNC. The view that people will only leave the PNC not because of his inept leadership, not because of their failure in government to fulfill their promises, not because of their lack of any vision or plan for the future, not because they are propagating a failed ideology of race, but because PPP is bribing them, as though former PNC members, and particularly Afro-Guyanese, don't have the capacity to make independent judgment. That is how disparaging a view he has of them. And this is something that is typical of the PNC. We own you, regardless of what we have done and we do. You have to vote for us, but we never take care of your concerns when we're in office. That is their motto. And let's don't harbor any doubt that this is not a French view. This is the view of the PNC. This is the view of the PNC. Now, he had, when you had, if I'm doing an analysis of the people who left, when you have some of your key activists, particularly women activists, who've held leadership position in the party, leave and accuse you as the reason for them leaving and say that the party has no future whatsoever with a failed ideology, it is a huge problem. And he refuses to acknowledge that as a problem, and this is why they will be decimated at the next elections. It's clear as daylight that they can't win the elections alone or combined with Norton as the leader, with Nigel Hughes as the leader, or anyone else that they may want to put as the leader. They will not win the elections. And that is evident to any right-thinking person. If you travel across this country, you will hear that from people in their private conversations, and you would sense it yourself. And one way of assessing this is to look at the limited engagements that people have with them when they have the public meetings, etc. So when a party is so divorced from reality that it would say, for example, Elson Lowe saying that the budgets of 2023, 2024, and 2025 combined did not address poverty. And you come from a party that had been in office for 5 years, in which 35,000 people lost jobs as a result of your policies, and another maybe 35,000 when COVID hit. And this government has put all of those people back to work to a point where we have labor shortages in many sectors. If you look at the construction industry now in Guyana, it's practically in many ways dominated by Venezuelans. If you go to construction sites, because in many areas you can't find local labor. That is coming from a past when in 2020, when the APNU was in office. Now, if more people are working, it means more people are coming out of poverty. We have supported a large number, the 15,000 part-time workers. They were not working on the APNU. Now they are working across the country. The 3,000 Amerindians who are CSOs, they never had a job on the APNU, they have a job now. So if you're talking about poverty, the key way of getting out of poverty is not by giving handouts, by first of all, ensuring that people have a job. And by any standard, any metric, any assessment that is done today in 2025 compared to 2020 when we took office, will find that tens of thousands of Guyanese now are working, more are working, both in the public sector and in the private sector. That's an important factor. And it came about largely because we re-engineered immediately when we got into office the fiscal environment to stimulate investments. And because of this, we saw massive investments coming into the country and in every sector. And that is why you have so many people working today. So today I don't want to do an extended press conference. I'm tempted to do short press conferences now and then come maybe twice a week so that I can respond to, as we get closer to elections from the party side, to respond to the numerous lies that are told during the course of the week. So I'm thinking about it seriously because many times the accusations are left hanging for a whole week. And as a party, I think we need to respond to those accusations. But on this matter here, I think it's very clear about the role that the PPP has played and the changes now, and that APNU and the others are basic. I don't want to say a spent force because it would be disparaging political parties, and we never underestimate the people we're contesting against. That is why the People's Progressive Party has been successful. We never underestimate. We work harder. We work every time as though we are behind, even though we know we're going to win the elections. And that's why we work hard to ensure that people understand our vision for the future, what our plans are, how their lives will change under us, and what we intend to do to support them and their families. Every day we do that. We go out on the ground. We don't do it going on the ground, talking to communities, is not a feature of the People's Progressive Party that was recently developed. We've held throughout our lives tens of thousands of bottom house meetings in the opposition just to explain our loss in the 2015 elections. I did more than 90 bottom house meetings to say, hold on a minute, we can complain about the loss, or we can accept that we're out of office and now work to rebuild the party bottom up to win the next elections. We can take one of the two positions. And I opted for the latter position. And that's why we started rebuilding and debunking the lies that APNU told. There are many, many lies. And then people saw us as representing their interests, people of every race. Our office was open to people of every class, every race at the leader of the opposition office. We didn't have an office that was, even I didn't have the office at Congress, at Freedom House, because some people had a stigma, particularly who were new to us, about coming to Freedom House. I managed it from the leader of the opposition office and had thousands of meetings, literally with various interest groups. And people started to see more and more the heart of the PPP. But this is not unique. Chedi Jagan did it and others. So when I hear recently, I see some of the people going out, I think this is good, but it is not. You have to understand the nature of the People's Progressive Party. And we've been doing this, and we'll continue to do it in elections. I saw the recent spate of ministers going out in what is considered a post-budget explanation of the budget and where we are going and what they can expect for this year and the future. And I saw someone said, oh, they're having elections in July because they see us going out. But this is not election campaigning. You will know when we start campaigning elections. You know that directly. And we we will tell you when the elections are going to be held, and we'd start campaigning for those through the launch of our manifesto, and then you would see the engagements we have. So clearly, the PNC and AFC are, people don't pay too much attention to them. And now, the fact that they're engaged in a discussion whether they will contest the elections together or not is just a smokescreen. They will contest the elections together. Trust me. It's not, in spite of all these principles that they talk about. You remember I think it was the Lilienthal or the Cummings-Burg Accord, something of that nature. I think the Cummings-Burg Accord. They will come together. And so right now what they're doing, they're dividing the spoils of office that they will never win. So they're saying, you will get this and I will get this, etc. That's what they're more interested in. That is what they were interested in the 5 years. Who got what? Who controlled which ministry? Which minister had which sector? And that dominated the entire 5 years, and they forgot all about people and their interests. When people come to the People's Progressive Party, if you go on our list, nobody promises you any position in the government thereafter. That's how we work. We have a manifesto with promises we make to people. We commit to the promises in the manifesto, and we determine the nature of the government after the elections. We don't split up spoils and negotiate spoils of office before elections. It is a phenomenally arrogant way of doing business, and it's typical of the APNU AFC mentality. And the exercise that they're engaged in now, these negotiations, are just about that, about sharing spoils. So that's why, from the PPP's perspective, we are not very concerned about it. I think the only people who are concerned about it are they themselves, and they're fighting to have leadership. You know, I've seen all sorts of things in my life, political life, but I've never seen a political party in Guyana sell its manifesto, if it has one. So this is a new, and with Nigel Lewis, everything is about money. Exxon, you remember the Exxon, if the national interest conflicts with that of ExxonMobil, I take Exxon's side because they pay me. I'm on their payroll. I will take a case from a mass murderer, a drug dealer, whatever else, if the money is right. So in this very unusual thing, someone said to me that they have a website, and the website says, "Discover Nigel Yu's vision for a fair, stronger Guyana." But when you click on it, you have to subscribe to them. You have to pay some money before you learn of his vision. This is a new low for Guyana, or maybe a new high for Guyana. But it's a pretty unusual thing. You know, every week we come here, you listen to the president, you listen to ministers, you listen to ordinary PPP people talking about our vision for the future, our plans for healthcare, education, etc. As public figures, you have to do that. I do that here routinely. I even spoke about things we're considering for a new manifesto, the qualitative issues for the next 5 years. I didn't say, oh, they're going to steal these ideas. I'm worried that they will put them out before us, and therefore we would be seen as, following them. I was not worried about that because I'm confident in our ability to not only come up with the ideas, but also to elaborate on them, craft them into practical plans to support a vision. I'm confident about that. They are not so confident. So you have to, first of all, Nigel Lewis talk about a vision for Guyana when he was new, before the shine was rubbed off of him. And he talked about his vision for Guyana. But we were trying to think, where is the vision? And then he told the reporters that, you know what? I don't really have a plan. I want all the political parties to get together and work on this plan. So this is a rare admission of honesty from a political party that had been in existence for over 15 years, the AFC, saying, for 15 years, we don't know what we were pursuing. We don't have a plan for transforming Guyana, although we claim we did in 2015. So that was a rare admission. Then he said that some members would be working on an oil and gas strategy. And he had nothing to do with it as the leader of the party because he was working for Exxon. But they would work on an independent oil and gas strategy. That has not seen daylight until now. And then from their counterparts, the PNC, they are more comfortable with slogans. People-centered development. Import substitution. These were things I learned in school from a different era. Like import substitution and collective self-reliance and reliance. Those were the feed, clothe, and house the nation program of the old PNC. Norton still resides in that era. So far, they have absolutely no program. They are very good at criticizing the PPP. So you're not doing enough on poverty. We didn't do anything on poverty, but you're not doing enough. Bypassing all that we've done, like Christopher Jones and the others saying, oh, the 100,000 to the woman is not anything. The people, it's an admission of poverty. Well, the thing is that we're giving 100,000 additionally to women who just had a newborn. We put in this year's budget $10,000 for every adult Guyanese to get a voucher to do basic tests. We had a spectacle program last year. We had a cervical cancer program. We have public servants have gotten $500 million US more per year since we got into office. By now, 40,000 Guyanese would have gotten a house lot. By now, 50,000 persons would have benefited from government-paid scholarships. We now made university education free. We've hired 15,000 part-time workers. More jobs are created. I can go down the long list. People got $100,000 cash grant, every Guyanese. I can go down the long list. They did zero in housing practically, zero in all these areas. No plan for health care. They increased the UG fees by 35% when they were in office. But they have a lot of criticisms. Nothing. They can't craft a plan. You tell me, if you're talking honestly today as an ordinary citizen of this country, which political party or aspirants into politics now has a plan for the oil and gas sector as we do, for monetizing gas, for taking healthcare and education to a different level, for expanding infrastructure, for diversification of the economy, for adaptation to climate change. I can go down the long list. I can tell you what our plans are right here. Now, I can say that. Not a single other party can do that. And we're in election year already. And we're in election year. They don't know. They'll come together. They'll get a couple of people like the Elson Loan, my Paul, will cut and paste some things, and they would present it as manifesto. And they would say, oh, the PP is giving you $10, we'll give you $15. That's their plan. That's not how it works. So anyone, small parties, political aspirants, etc., you can't just go around posting nice images of yourself. You have to have some substance too. So in this case, at least the PNC didn't say you have to pay for their plan. Well, whatever they say, people-centered development. The Nigel Hughes wants you to pay monthly $50 a month and stuff like that, $100 directly impact. And they have, imagine this, it's a class thing. You know, Nigel Hughes and others believe they're sophisticated and upper middle class and they can look down on the rest of Guyanese and stuff like that. So you have a tiered system. So if you pay $10 a month, you can only support grassroots organizing efforts. $20 would help you do something else, right? It would involve you anything. And then, if you pay $100, you can directly impact the critical campaign. So they have a tiered structure. So if you're a low life, you're not on this structure, you're the $10 per month person, right? And then if you can drink wine and discuss Chaucer or Shakespeare in a fake environment, and then of sophistication, then you can be the $500 a month supporter. That is the stupidity of these people. But you have to pay to understand Nigel Hughes' vision for the future of the country. Nobody wants to know about your vision. We know what it is already. We know what it is already. It's to dupe the people of the country. You've made it clear from the first interview that Demarara Waves had with you when he asked you a question. If your interests would conflict with those, national interests were to conflict with those of ExxonMobil, whose side would you be on? You said ExxonMobil. That's the end of the matter. That's the end of the matter. How can we trust you beyond that? And you can't answer several times. You've lied to the media about, remember the apology for the elections? He said, I have to find out what took place in 2020 for us to decide whether we'll make an apology, whether they have to try to rig the elections. Today, I gather, was the day when Mingo made the second false declaration. Today. And until now, he can't have this review. He then blamed GCOM that he couldn't complete his review because of something to do with GCOM. But they are in the public domain. In 2025, people say, why go back to 2020? But the same players are here in 2025 dishonestly claiming that they won the 2020 elections. If you can't acknowledge that fact, that you lost the elections and there was an attempt to rig the elections, how could anyone in this country trust you? So I don't believe that people of the country, particularly APNU supporters, are going to fall prey for their lives again. They're not going to fall prey. I think a lot those who traditionally supported the PPP, they already are aware of their lies. And more Guyanese of every race are becoming more aware of what these guys stand for, which is nothing, just for themselves, not for the people of the country. So in the last week, we also had a very important declaration. And it did not receive much publicity. And I guess this is largely because the statement coming out from the International Monetary Fund about its review of Guyana and its economy through the Article 4 consultation was entirely positive. Had this been a negative review, every single day you would have seen elements of it in the media and editorials from the Starbuck News and others speaking of it. They sometimes elevate an obscure report from some part of the world from an organization that nobody knows exists and make it seem as the prevailing condition in the country. So I saw some organization talking about press freedom in Guyana, which, as you know, is healthy and strong. But they ignore the giant in the room, which is the International Monetary Fund statement. Now, the Article 4 consultation, we do not have a program with the IMF. We exited the program since 2006 because we worked our way out of that program from the era when we were bankrupt. We were declared uncreditworthy to borrow in the 80s, late 80s and 90s when the PNC was in government by the International Monetary Fund, uncreditworthy to borrow. When you get such a declaration, that means you can't borrow commercially and you can only go borrow in the context of an IMF supported program, which entails a lot of conditionalities. So because our economy was bankrupt, declared bankrupt in the 90s by the IMF, the APNU went into a program, a structural adjustment program. They had no national program. You hear sometimes they go back and say, oh, we had the economic recovery program. That was a structural adjustment program dictated by the International Monetary Fund. And when the PPP got into office, we had to work our way out of that program. In the period when we are declared uncreditworthy, I mentioned already about Sir Alistair McIntyre saying we were poorer than Haiti. But the debt fundamentals, the debt servicing, according to Carl Greenidge himself, was 153% of revenue in that period. So you know you're bankrupt in those days. We work our way out of that situation. And I'm pleased to say before 2015, in fact, by 2050, before oil and gas, we had brought our debt to GDP ratio down from 900% of GDP to 45% of GDP, lower than any developed country in the world. And we are using a smaller share of revenue by 2050, before oil, of revenue to service debt than any CARICOM country and many countries in the world. That's the track record of the PPP. Apart from the schools and the roads and the power fixing that over that period, the progress, we restored macroeconomic fundamentals. Inflation rate came down. I told you about interest rates coming down from 40%. If you are borrowing to build a house, you had to pay a 40% mortgage rate. Came down, all of it. So I just digressed a bit to tell you a bit about the history of our dealing with the IMF. The Article 4 consultation is done where it's more of a consultative arrangement. So I saw the entire positive thing. So I did not see Mr. Norton mentioned here that he actually met with the IMF team. But clearly, the PNC issued a statement saying that the leader of the opposition met with the IMF team, and he was accompanied by Elson Lone Mahipal. And that they talk about incompetence and corruption and everything else under the sun. This is their release. I didn't see much of that in the statement from the IMF, because people know when you are campaigning. But clearly, if you go, and I would urge Guyanese, because not many people have read the full, they may have read a small news story on the mission concluding statement, but read the whole statement and you will see the key headlines. Here are the key headlines. Guyana's economic transformation is advancing at a strong pace and broadening in scale. The medium-term economic outlook remains highly favorable with balanced risk. Staff commends the authorities' continued commitment to maintaining macroeconomic stability, ensuring fiscal sustainability, and fostering inclusive growth. Given Guyana's development and investment needs, the fiscal policy stance is appropriate at this stage, and the fiscal deficits should gradually close over the medium term. Monetary policy remains appropriately tight, helping to contain inflation. There is scope to strengthen macroprudential framework to help effectively respond to potential shocks to financial stability. The authorities have advanced in enhancing governance of the NRF and modernizing public sector operations. Staff supports Guyana's continued efforts to strengthen its AML, CFT, and anti-corruption frameworks in line with its international commitments. Continued implementation of reforms will further strengthen fiscal transparency and anti-corruption framework, including in extractive industries. Guyana remains a global pioneer in climate policies, monetizing forest conservation, and the authorities are enhancing the country's energy matrix, strengthening macroeconomic resilience. Staff supports the authorities' efforts to foster inclusive growth, economic diversification, and upgrading of labor skills. These are the headlines. These are the headlines in the IMF concluding statement. Now, if you go through the content of these headlines, you will see how much of what we are doing, when assessed by a technically capable body, not by Elson Lowe, who was a resort assistant at SARA in the last government. He's their economic spokesperson now. Now the IMF sends down a huge team of economists. They spend several days. They go through all the agencies. They meet with people in the labor movement. As they said, the private sector, they met with Norton. I met with them and the Minister of Finance and the technical staff, and they do their own independent assessment which goes to the board. And so, where it concerns framework for managing the economy, they've made it clear that the framework we are pursuing is a sustainable framework. They spoke about support for inclusive growth. They support our policy of giving periodic cash grants. We spoke about that. We spoke about the potential for overheating the economy in my engagements with them. This was a concern of theirs and ours too. And we demonstrated to them how, because of direct interventions, we have been able to temper the cost of living increases. That is why we have inflation rates close to those of the region or even lower than many regional countries, although we have expanded our economy and our capital budget has soared, which are potentially inflationary, but because of our direct interventions, we explained to the IMF that's why the economy did not overheat so much. We had a long discussion on a lot of these issues, like, I mentioned before, removing the 50% excise tax from fuel to keep transportation rate constant, keeping the electricity rate constant, water rate constant, reforms that lower the cost of internet, mortgage rates came down. All of these things help to keep the cost of living index or the inflation low. So they talk about the transparency surrounding the NRF. If you listen to APNU, they say that that we are raiding the NRF and that somehow there is something like it lacks transparency and that it's not appropriate. We must save all of the money for the future. You heard what the IMF said, the fiscal policy stance of the government is appropriate. And we've explained this at great length. We said that Norway, yesterday I met with Norwegian ambassador, one of the ambassadors, someone I knew for a very long time, since the days when I went with Dr. Jagan and Desmond Hoy to Atlanta. He was there at the Carter Center. He went to the conference. So this was going back a long time. And he played a critical role in helping us to get the agreement with Norway, the agreement on the forest. And we're talking about Norway and its investment in the Sovereign Wealth Fund. And I said to him here that we will start saving a substantial portion of the fund by 2027, given the formula that we have and given the expected resource flow. And this is only a few years after we started producing oil and gas. In Norway's case, it was 25 years after they started production that they started saving for intergenerational equity, because they utilized the money to develop the country, health, education, infrastructure, so you could have promoted better welfare and stimulated non-oil investments. Precisely what we're doing. But we're even accelerating the savings for intergenerational equity. So when you hear talk from these guys, their nonsensical talk, they clearly don't have a nuanced view. There's a nuisance court case filed now about, we are not complying with the law because the law says oil and gas revenue can only fund development priorities and emergency. We've never triggered the emergency provision of the law. But who in the world, in a country, determines what the national development priorities are? It is the executive of the country that's elected by the people. And in our case, the executive, through its budget, develop what the priorities are. And we further got it endorsed by the legislature of the country, and the legislature, which passed the NRF law, also approves the transfer consistent with the law. So you have the executive and the legislature of the country agreeing to what the national priorities are. The judiciary can't tell the executive what its national development priorities are, because every government would have different national priorities for development priorities. For APNU, it was buying fancy vehicles. That was their national development priorities. It was sending their ministers to Ireland for medical care through an insurance arrangement that we paid for. It was the SLED program that Christopher Jones and the others were using for themselves. It's that sort of national development priority. They had a different one than we had. They took away the money from the school kids. That was not their national development priority, the 10,000 grant, but put it on dietary, more food in the government. The children were not their priority. University education was not our priority. They increased the cost. So we have different priorities from them, but it was their right to do that because they were in government. But it was misguided. But coming back to the key point is that even if one were to say, all right, well, should we not identify what they are generally? If you look at the education and health expenditures in this year's budget, and you add roads and bridges, I made this point before, it's more money that we're spending this year on just education, health, roads and bridges than than revenue from the oil and gas sector in the budget. So we're spending more on those 3-4 areas than we have received from the oil and gas sector's revenue. But it's a nuisance lawsuit. It's as many things are from the opposition, engage in a lot of nuisance activities. So I would urge Guyanese to read this document because it debunks a lot of the nonsense that we get that passes off as analysis from the opposition. And the PNC, AFC doesn't even talk about these things. They don't even talk about this. So this is very important for us. So last week, I addressed for the first time the issue of the Mohammeds. You would recall that on several occasions, right here at this press conference, I said that we are not going to criticize individuals for their social activities or even their political activities once they don't come after the People's Progressive Party. That was our position throughout it all. That we had a duty to defend the PPP, its track record, its vision, and its commitment to the people of this country. And we will not allow anyone whatsoever to misrepresent what we are doing. So, Mr. Mohammed, prior to last week's press conference, made a public statement in which he identified several areas that he believed the PPP administration is targeting him in. He said, first of all, in fact, he started off by misrepresenting the sanctions, falsely claiming that the sanctions that were imposed by the United States government on the Mr. Nazar Mohammed and Nazruddin Mohammed and companies associated with them, that those sanctions had a bearing only on nationals of the United States of America. He said that the OFAC statement, falsely said that the OFAC statement said only U.S. entities and U.S. citizens or green card holders could face sanctions or law enforcement actions should they engage in business with him. And it's not true that Guyanese will face any form of sanction if they were to interact with his family. I read from the statement that OFAC released last year. And that statement said that persons transiting the United States of America and nationals of other countries too can face sanctions or enforcement actions. It's in the document itself, but he misrepresented that. He started off with that misrepresentation. He then claimed that people close to the People's Progressive Party or the administration had lost their visas. That it's not true that people associated with the Mohammeds had had their visas revoked, visitors' visas. So that in itself showed that the sanctions could be applicable to anyone. Because if you have a visitor's visa and it was revoked because of interactions with the Mohammeds, then it means that it's applicable to people who are not U.S. citizens, because U.S. citizens do not need a visa to travel to the United States of America. So I said, I made it clear that this is not so. In fact, a number of people, religious leaders, several others, who had engaged with the Mohammeds some in a passing way even, but had a record of calls, apparently calls or text messages or anything else with the Mohammeds, or were seen around them. They were questioned by U.S. law enforcement officials when they entered the United States of America on a visitor's visa, and many of them had their visas revoked. And I know this to be true, they're individuals, should it come to this, that I can point to, who came back and told us this. So that was the first misrepresentation, blaming the PPP for this matter. The second thing he said in the letter is that, in the statement, is that he was aware of a businessman in Guyana who was smuggling large quantities of gold and maybe purchasing a large quantity of gold from the Venezuelan military, and who was putting the financial system here at risk, but nothing is being done about this individual. So I said, you should make this public, who the individual is. I'm sure that everyone would be happy to know, the media, the police, the US government, everyone would be happy to know who this individual is, particularly if they're breaching sanctions against Venezuela. So make the information public. But I pointed out that here is a sanctioned individual who was accused by the United States government of smuggling over 10,000 kilograms of gold out of Guyana. 10,000 kilograms is 10 tons of gold. Just imagine 10 tons of gold. 10,000 kilograms of gold out of Guyana between 2019 to 2023, and evading at a minimum 50 million US in taxes. The US ambassador had said they have a mountain of evidence to support this. Now, imagine in your long statement, that's the basis for the sanction, and you didn't address that at all, but you know who else is smuggling gold. So I pointed out about the duplicity of this statement and the individual. Thirdly, he said that there would be an attempt to assassinate his son, and tried to point this at the PPP somehow. Now, I made it clear our track record is pristine on that. We don't assassinate political opponents or any individual. I pointed out which party did that. We are not the ones accused of murder. The Mohammeds have been accused of murder. And so I said the best way to deal with this matter is to make the plot known to the media again and to the police. Imagine you have this information, a credible threat. Why not take it to the police so they can investigate it and make this a public issue? This would be the only right thing to do. So that was the third issue. The fourth issue was he claimed that the PPP was discriminating against him because we took away his cambio licenses apart from other activities in government that he was prohibited from doing. So the mining and then the Bharrat issue of ending the cabotage agreement. And all of this, I believe he was doing for public sympathy, saying that the government should not really have taken away his cambio licenses or disengaged from doing business with him. So I had to point out last week about whether we should support the sanctioned individuals or we should support the country of Guyana and its people. And I said that the choice is very clear for the People's Progressive Party. We'll put country and people ahead of these individuals. Because had we not disengaged, by now, most of the people in the country would not have been able to use their credit cards or a debit card. You couldn't make online purchases. The banks would have probably lost their correspondent relationships. You think we can risk people's future out of some perceived sense of loyalty to you and your son? Because somewhere in the past, you claimed you supported all political parties financially, including the People's Progressive Party. So that was last week. I just had to recap. So until now, we have not seen the Mohammeds do any of the stuff that I urged them to do publicly. Will they answer the question, did they smuggle 10,000 kilograms of gold or not, and owe the state $50 million US dollars or $11 billion at a minimum? That's a straightforward question. And is the United States of America lying when they said they have a mountain load of evidence? That's a straightforward question, rather than obfuscate the issue by you know who else is smuggling. Well, if you know, that's fine. But tell us about the sanction itself. Were the sanctions justified or not? And this straddled gold exported on the APNU and on the PP from 2019 to 2023. That is what the letter said. So if that's true, that means you owe the state $11 billion. The second thing I urge Mr. Mohammed to do is to go to the police and also write every organization globally about who wants to assassinate your son. I've not seen anything in the public domain on that. He just made a statement, threw shades at the PPP, and then just, ignored it totally. He didn't address it. I'm expecting, if you know this, go to the police, write the US government, write the United Nations, because that's the thing you should do if you know of a plot to assassinate your son. The third issue is the businessman who is breaching US sanctions. Could you make public his name or give it to the law enforcement authorities since you know so much about who is smuggling gold? So none of these questions were answered in the past week. None of the questions were answered in the past week. Instead of answering the questions, they went and made a new set of accusations. So, the new set of accusations, and Gordon Mosley, news source, seems to be the new mouthpiece of the Mohammeds. They're securing interviews with the Mohammeds. And they didn't ask the tough questions. Did Mosley ask, did you smuggle 10,000 kilograms of gold out the country? As if you have an interview with the Mohammeds, as you claim here, and you represented in this story, you should have asked that question if you're a reporter who is dedicated to finding out the truth, or who wanted to assassinate your son. Should you not speak about this? None of that came out. So a new headline now, Nazar Mohammed claims government engaged in major transactions with family after US sanctions. Didn't give nothing, no answers from last week, a new accusation now. So I will urge Mr. Nazar Mohammed to make public what these transactions were. I will urge him, since he has this information about 3 major business transactions that were done in the last year since he was sanctioned, he should release the information, what this is about. Since we are all for transparency. And well, when he releases them, then I'll talk about that. So don't let me tell you as yet. So I'm hoping he would release them. I'm calling on him, like I did last week, to release what they are, what they are. And then, in another interview that Mosley had, Mosley again, I think they found a new PR group for the family. Nazar Mohammed vows not to pay GRA's malicious $900 million tax demand for vehicles imported 4 years ago. So last week, I think I dealt with this matter. Now, I dealt with this matter just by saying that it was extraordinarily stupid for his son, Azhar Mohammed, to make a post about how much taxes he paid. So Muhammad is in the story now that God mostly represented. They're claiming that this is because his son decided to run, that this is a vindictive act, the demand for him to pay the real taxes on the imported vehicle was pursued by the government. So let's follow the sequence of events. So on 18th of February of this year, Team Mohammed, in, as I said, a moronic act, posted this. The Mohammeds paid over $98.6 million in taxes to GRA for just 3 vehicles. Mohammed's enterprise is categorized among the largest taxpayers in Guyana, and yet in recent weeks, a few Guyanese bent on creating mischief have raised questions about their tax history. In GRA, there is a specific classification of large taxpayers under which the Mohammeds fall. This is unsolicited. This is his son posting this. He's blaming the PPP for this. But this is, as I said before, the moronic post that they did. In fact, with just 3 vehicles, 2 Land Cruisers and a Lamborghini, the GRA collected $98.6 million in taxes from the Mohammeds. I'm not going to read the others, the rest of the post. Now, immediately thereafter, 2 days later, this is what the GRA, not this week, not last week, but 2 days after he made that post, this was a press release from the GRA. And it referred, this is what it said: the GRA is taking note of a recent social media Facebook post with attached GRA receipts. So he did not even make the post alone. The guy put receipts of his payment. Look, I can find you the receipts there. He posted all the receipts to GRA. He is talking about people's tax business. He posted his whole tax business. Wasn't the PPP that released it? Look at the receipts. This was in his post, Team Mohammed. So he said, I paid $98.6 million. Here are the tax receipts. These are all posted. He brought this matter into the public domain. So the GRA then issued the statement which says, the GRA has taken note of a recent social media Facebook post with attached GRA receipts purportedly being circulated by Team Mohammed on the payment of over $98.6 million in taxes to the GRA on 3 vehicles, namely 2 Land Cruisers and a Lamborghini, and further claims to be of contribution of billions of dollars to the nation's economic development through taxes. It's a long release. I don't want to bore you and the people of this country. So please read the release yourself. But it says here, in the above instances, the GRA, having followed these principles, determined that the value of the said imports were grossly understated, and more so in the case of the Lamborghini, thereby allowing for taxes in excess of $300 million in revenue being underpaid and collectible from the importer. Now, this is 2 days after he posted how much taxes he paid. He brought the tax matter into the public domain. He posted all of his receipts that he paid. And then the GRA said, hold on a minute. you've still not, and you would see why the GRA went after him. Because they explain it in the release. They said, you owe us over $300 million in taxes. 2 days later, he's saying, it's recently we decided to go after him. The PPP initiated this issue. He did himself. But the father is so blinkered, would not see that it is his own son that drew this attention to the GRA. Now, on tax matters, you recall Terence Campbell. Terence Campbell went after a number of private businesses in Guyana who are not paying their taxes. He said they're not paying their taxes. Jagdeo not paying taxes. Check his post. I did not know that until it came out in the public domain that under the PPP government, Terence Campbell got $138 million written off in taxes, claiming he was bankrupt, even not remitting VAT that he collected from people, which I think is a criminal act. We didn't know because I don't pursue Terence Campbell's tax records. I don't even know how much a Lamborghini costed until this matter came up. We didn't know what he paid here. I didn't know what he paid to GRA. I saw this. GRA itself saw it, and they responded. He brought the matter to the fore. So now that GRA, I see he says he wants to hire a lawyer because it was 4 years ago. And this is the access. Proceedings under the custom laws may be commenced at any time within 7 years after the date of the offense. And what was the offense GRA said? He underdeclared the Lamborghini. And you know what the declaration value of the Lamborghini was? $75,300 US. Lower than the declared value of a Land Cruiser, which is about 10%, I'm told, of the true value of the Lamborghini. Now, he declared that, as Rudin Mohammed sent an invoice to GRA declaring the Lamborghini at that rate. But clearly they believe. So the father didn't deal with the under-declaration. Oh, it's a conspiracy. There must be two laws for this country. One for the Mohammeds. Not whether you cheated the taxes, but somebody, because it got exposed. Your son exposed it himself, not the PPP. I go to court and fight it. You must not pay your right taxes. Everyone else on their vehicles must pay high taxes. But you can blatantly under-declare something and the law would accept it. The PPP must accept it, or the government must accept it. So that's how they believe. We can smuggle gold or whatever else, but when people come after us, it's a conspiracy. Not that you're the defaulting agency and you have to, in this country, regardless of who you are, if you're wealthy too, you don't have a privileged position in breaking the law. Maybe they've grown accustomed to that. But you don't have a privileged position. And so he is not dealt with the under-invoicing. Now dealing with, oh, it's a conspiracy against the PPP. He's not dealt with the fact that it was they who brought the matter into the public forum. Now, having done that, the GRA must have looked at the other vehicles that were imported. And so the letters that went off showed significant breaches. So this guy is, as I said before, I think he does some crazy things. So You know, the family brought in a Ferrari, but under a remigrant scheme. So it doesn't belong to Azruddin Mohammed. But in a Facebook post, he speaks about while at the estate, the children who were accompanied by their teachers were fascinated and elated to have seen Mr. Mohammed's fleet of vehicles, including the Lamborghini and Ferrari, up close. He posted that they belonged to his fleet. Now, the vehicle didn't come to him. It doesn't belong to him. But he posted this. So clearly, now that that has been done, they have to check the vehicle through what arrangement it came. And see whether the remigrant breached the conditions of the conditions to access the concessions. And they would have an opportunity to present a case. I think GRA said, show us that you're not in breach, and then that's fine. So that's all GRA said, show us you're not in breach. So this whole issue about conspiracy, oh, we're going after their vehicles, it's 4 years ago. They've not dealt with this. The evidence for this cheating the GRA is right here in the post, or the many posts that he made. So we can I want to disabuse people's mind about that the origin of this matter was from the PPP. So we've looked at the activities in the course of the week. So I saw a credible source said that, not that that's a credible source, that's Sherrod Duncan, I think. I think Sherrod Duncan might be a credible source. I don't know who he is, but he said that the Mohammed, to a growing crowd in Essequibo Coast community, where he claimed that Vice President Bharrat Jagdeo personally contacted his father, urging that his team stop meeting with residents and posted about their activities. It's a blatant lie. It's a blatant lie. Why would I be concerned about his activities? He's not going to make an iota of difference to the PPP supporters. We'd win the elections, and I'll tell you about that just now. He poses no threat to the People's Progressive Party, absolutely none. And so you think people are seduced by just putting pictures up together? Anyhow, I'll deal with that in a moment. So this is a blatant lie. It's a blatant lie. That's not the way I roll. I would not call his father and beg for anything. In fact, I said right here, he could post whatever he wishes. I defended his right to go around the country. So the father, on the other hand, in the interview with Mosley said, we sent emissary. We didn't go directly, so contradiction, some emissary. Well, I don't know about emissary. I never asked any emissary to go to his father about anything. Never did. And if the emissary went, maybe they did a hustle on him, because people could say, I'm going from this man, coming from Jagdeo or Irfanali or something. It might be a hustle. People know that you can get money for free, so they go and pull a little hustle on them. And I don't begrudge the people, but never an emissary to them. what would the emissary say? This is a sanctioned entity. We have already, from the beginning, we've disengaged. We were in the process of orderly disengaging from them. That's why they're complaining about the PPP, because they believe we must keep them doing everything they were doing before, in spite of US sanctions, and put at risk the country. And that's not going to happen. So this is all false. Yeah, but you're free, they're free to tell the public who this emissary was and what he told them. As I said before, I've asked them to come in the public on many issues. We don't have anything to worry about with the Mohammeds. And there is this fallacy that they used to be funding the PPP. If their support did come financially, it was tiny support of what we got from ordinary people and from other people around the country. If they made any significant or any support to the people financially. I was General Secretary of the party. I am General Secretary since maybe 8 years now. Never gave me money. I didn't know of any money that was given to the PPP because outside of the system that we have here where people pay money in. Anybody who pays a contribution in gets a receipt from the party. We issue receipts for contributions collected. So I don't know about that, but they were not the financier of the PPP. They themselves said they gave financial support to everyone. So Norton asked the media to ask me the question. I don't need the media to ask me. I'll tell you openly. I'll tell you openly. We have nothing to hide. We have absolutely nothing to hide. But we're not going to have two laws or sets of laws in this country. One for the Mohammeds and one for everyone else. That's not going to work. That's not how the PPP operates. So we have long predicted that should he decide to run for elections, that he would do so with support from the AFC and the PNC. They, in their calculation, they somehow think that if Azruddin Mohammed were to run, he would take some support from the PPP. And therefore, they could win the elections. It's delusion all the way around, from the Mohammeds themselves and from APNU and AFC. Let me tell you about the pattern that you would have seen. So first of all, it's Obraj, the PNC mayor, who was going around with him. And so he farmed out the speaking to Obraj because he doesn't speak Azruddin Mohammed much himself. Then I saw another PNC councillor, Dexter Ford. It's only a PNC APNU-led coalition government could engage the U.S. in relation to the removal of sanctions from the Mohammeds. So this is what they're being told, that APNU, AFC would help them to remove the sanctions. Of course, it's a lie. APNU, AFC can't help itself, much less help anybody to remove the sanctions. But clearly, this is what they're being told because they're desperate. They want some political party to say this to them. You see, their PNC saying this to them. Then Rickford Burke, You recall Rickford Burke, just a few months ago, was saying there is a cover-up, that the Mohammeds were part of the plot to kill Paper Short. Rickford Burke was saying this about the Mohammeds. Now suddenly the Mohammeds are more pristine than our rainforests. So we see a pattern here. It's the PNC. So it's Rickford Burke. I seen Gordon Mosley now, Dexter Ford, Obraj, and then Nigel Hughes yesterday met with the Mohammeds. And had it not been in the public domain, exposed in the public domain, we would have known about it. We wouldn't have known about it, this secret meeting that they had. So, because it was exposed, Nigel Hughes issued a press release. And he said the discussion included, he didn't say what else was discussed, addressing legal obstacles which the team was encountering in its philanthropic work. That is interesting. But what is even more interesting is what Nigel Hughes posted. He let the cat out of the bag, I think. The consultations were of a legal, professional nature. Mr. Trotman, General Secretary of the AFC, attended to provide professional political advice to Mr. Hughes on the possible political implications of his possible professional engagement with the Mohammeds. Now, clearly, Trotman doesn't attend anything in the country, but he took the time to be part of the meeting with Nigel Hughes and the Mohammeds because he had to advise on the politics. Now, this was a professional encounter. Nigel Hughes said a professional encounter. Why do you need a political advisor there to discuss a matter where a company is seeking professional advice? They think people are stupid. That's what. They have such a low opinion of us. Extraordinarily unbelievable. And he put that there and think we would just gloss over it. So I don't have any doubt that there would be a healthy engagement because of this fake promise that they can remove sanctions from the Mohammeds, and they believe that the Mohammeds could probably take some PPP support, that there would be a coming together of these forces. It's always like that. It's always like that. This is how it starts off at the beginning, or we're independent, and then it gets closer. So that brings me to Essequibo Coast. So who are the people who are organizing for the Mohammeds? And by the way, these meetings, they ferry people from different places, and it's not a large gathering, 100 people, etc., 150 persons, and they bring them in buses, this recycling people. And when people go there, they go thinking they're going to get some money. And you should see the disappointment when they don't get, because they believe the man has brought some money here, so I'm going to get some money here. They're disappointed. But I don't begrudge people for going for some money. But it's the same PNC organizers now, because the PNC is flat on Essequibo Coast. Nobody even wants to hear about the PNC much on the Essequibo Coast. So the PNC organizers and their supporters, key supporters, are latching on to the remnants. And they're taking a few people disaffected. We, in the last elections, in Essequibo, we got 18,785 votes. APNU got 7,340 votes. Their APNU can't get 7,340 votes. And you had 496 votes that came from the small parties. It's the same people are going to gravitate, the same PPP haters. As I said last week, Slack Buckton and the others are going to be the same ones who are haters of the PPP. Every time I see them appearing, oh, big crowd coming here, I just laugh at this. And I don't know, I want to say to the PPP supporters particularly, lay off these stupid people. Lay off these stupid people because they make no impact. People think they're going to get some money when they show up, and they're disappointed. You think the rice farmers, what policy do they have for the rice farmers? Nothing. You just, the Marar Wave story, some article said, there's some splice videos put together. He doesn't speak very much, but splice videos to achieve coherence. That's my word. You have to speak and outline your vision, etc. You can't just through innuendos, etc., talk to people. So we in Berbice, it's the same thing. In the last election, we got 43,440 votes, APNU 20,000 odd votes. But they're not going to get the 20,000 anymore. They're not going to get that, or AFC. And the small parties got about 1,738 votes, the small parties. So it's the same people who would not have come to the PPP, like some of the others. Well, a few might migrate there. Not going to make any difference. On the other hand, the PPP nationally, as we demonstrated in the local government elections, we have grown our support. In New Amsterdam, we're now 6 seats and APNU 8 seats. This is up from 2 seats in the town council here. In Maka, we grow our votes. In Kokoani, we grow our votes. In Linden, we got 2,500 votes more. In Linden, because the elections were held only in the township. Only in the township. We got 2,500 votes more. In Georgetown, we increased 11 seats in the city council. Because we are a national party. We cater for the interests of every Guyanese. Race and all of those things, and religion are not big issues. Well, they're not defining characteristic of how we treat people in our party. Once they work for the country and they work for the progress for everyone, you're welcome in the PPP. So when I look at the numbers, if you could easily go to a couple communities, like the kids would come out and run around and stuff like that. It's a different thing when you're actually voting. You have to vote on programs. And especially if you're a sanctioned U.S. entity. So when people say, oh, the PPP is scared of the Mohammeds, pure nonsense. Pure nonsense. But we are not, as I said right at the beginning, we're not arrogant. We will work on the ground. We will rebut everything they say about us, the lies they tell. We're not arrogant enough to say, oh, we don't need to address what they're saying, because they peddle lies every day to get away from the sanctions. They try to make themselves victims by claiming, oh, we're going after them for the taxes on vehicles, when it's their own stupidity that brought the worry on themselves. At least from the executive, I didn't know how much taxes they're paying. I don't go and check people's tax record every day. So I didn't know that they were evading this. They made a false declaration. So we will address it, but not because we're panicked. We know where we stand. Not because we're worried, but we will not allow any threat to deter us from doing what is right for this country. And so we have gone through the analysis. We've seen who the people are who are mobilizing for him and who are getting paid to. They're getting paid to mobilize for him. People, I'm not even sure some of those people actually believe what they're doing. So these are just some of the matters. I'm hoping, as I said before, if they keep criticizing the PPP, week after week we'll come after them. But they have a lot of things. I posed about 5 questions. 5 questions. I posed about 5 questions. Maybe they should give people honest answers to these 5 questions, including, does a Lamborghini cost $75,000 US? That's a key question. Does a Lamborghini cost $75,000 US? And when a Land Cruiser might cost more than that, the declared value for a Land Cruiser. So people should Google the price for a Lamborghini. You have homework today, the country. Google the price for a Lamborghini. I don't know what model it is, but you can get the model. It's in the public domain, and see what the price is. And then compare that with the 75,000, and you make your own judgment whether this is an honest act or a dishonest act. So that's all I'm going to say this week. Thank you.
Dr. Jagdeo from Belgrade with Kite News. I have 4 questions. The first one.
Just 1 minute, please. Let me make a note of your 4. Yeah, go ahead, Kite News. Yeah.
Yes, you have said that without ring fencing and with the high oil price, that Guyana would be able to pay off the cost faster, and we would be able to get full 50-50 in the future. But now that oil price has went down, where does that leave Guyana? Will we still be able to pay off without ring fencing? Secondly, Guyana has waived through the PSA billions of dollars in taxes for ExxonMobil, and recently the ExxonMobil president, Alistair Rutledge, said that profit sharing and royalty are just like taxes. Do you agree with his explanation? Do you agree with him? And if yes, could you explain to us why is royalty and profit sharing the same as taxes? Thirdly, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, he's calling for Efranali to meet him face to face. Is this the end of negotiations with Venezuela, or is Guyana going to attempt to meet through the Argyle Agreement again?
That's 3.
That's 3.
What's the 4th one? Let Glenn Lal didn't text you on there.
Oh.
Let him tell him.
The 4th one is the government is big on local content. Can you explain how can Guyanese get into this supply boat contract? Is it available for Guyanese to contest for these contracts as well?
Supply boats. Okay.
Supply boats.
All right. So let me go back to the ring fencing. And so clearly, that was one of the big issues with the 2016 PSA, that it had no ring fencing. And to the extent that you approve new projects or dependent on the price of oil, the cost bank and its repayment the pace of repayment will fluctuate. So those are clear issues. So to the extent that the question you asked me, to the extent that oil prices come down, it would take longer to retire the cost back, and therefore longer to achieve the 50-50. But oil prices fluctuate. So they may go down for a short period, but they may become elevated for other periods too. I argue that because the model was run on a $50 per barrel oil in the past, that some of the earlier models that we saw, there was a time frame for retiring the cost back based on $50. At oil prices now way above that the cost bank will be retired faster. That is, provided you don't add new projects to it. So at the current prices, they may be below what it was, say, a month ago, because it changes on a daily basis, but it's above what the model had at the beginning. So that's how I deal with that one. On waiving of taxes, now, profit sharing and royalty are a very important part of the PSA, but we believe that there should be taxes too. And that is why in the new PSA, we maintain the profit sharing, we increase the royalty from 2 to 10%, and we have now put in a 10% corporate tax in the new PSA. So clearly, we could not subscribe to what he said, given what we have done with the new PSA. On the supply boats, we believe progressively that Guyanese should form companies and benefit from the supply vessels. We hope to amend the local content law to give more room for local ownership of supply vessels. But these supply vessels are very costly. You know, they run into millions of US dollars. So it may be beyond the reach of an individual in Guyana to afford these vessels. But I think in partnerships with companies abroad, and also in a consortium of Guyanese companies, we may be able to get more Guyanese to invest in these areas and therefore bring more value or more income to our people. Because once you get a contract there, it's a long-term contract and it's predictable. And therefore you can make money on it. So we hope in the future that the local content law can evolve to allow more room for Guyanese in these areas, like how we did with some other areas where we had 100%, procurement from Guyanese companies. We may not get up to 100% immediately, but a bit bigger share of the supply vessels contract should go to Guyanese. On the issue of Maduro trying to meet, I think he has indicated that. I don't think there are any plans to meet. That has been finalized. At this point in time, no such plan has been finalized. He has indicated a desire to meet. That has to be assessed against what he wants to meet on, and also whether it's good for our country and our national security interests. And I guess the president will make that assessment. By the way, I forgot to mention that the president is in Texas, and he's been meeting with several top-ranking officials from the United States government, including the Secretary of Energy, and from Homeland Security and many other agencies in the United States of America. So we're hoping to continue this high-level engagement with not just with the Department of Energy, but State Department, the Justice Department, and other entities.
If I could just have one more, there's a developing issue in the Caribbean, in CARICOM specifically. We've seen Prime Minister Rowley and Barbados PM making strong statements in terms of the sanctions on the Cuban medical professionals. Motley was seen in a video saying that
I've seen some of the statements made around the Caribbean. I can assure you that there is a regional as well as national engagement with the U.S. State Department on these matters. We want to have Cuban professionals work in our health system. They have been an invaluable support to our health system, but we also want to ensure that they have free choice. This is something that we are working with the U.S. government, and also it's not just a national issue, but a regional issue.
specifically is Ms. Motley said that if agreement isn't reached, and it comes to that she might have to lose her U.S. visa, then so be it. Is the government of Guyana also going to follow suit in this way? Is government officials willing to take this strong stance again? Because we know how President Trump can be forming his policies.
Well, we don't do diplomacy in the public. And I believe we have a strong engagement with the Trump administration and with the State Department that would allow this matter to be resolved to the satisfaction of all parties. So that is how we'll approach it.
Mr. Jagdeo, Dennis Shabal, Demerara Waves. Sir, could you say whether the Guyana government has been informed whether a person of interest to Guyanese authorities, Melissa Atwell, has been detained or arrested by U.S. law enforcement agents? If so, what has the government been told are the reasons for her arrest or detention? And secondly, aren't you and or the PPP worried that the national election figures you have mentioned will not favor the PPP because of disenchantment and migration, when the gap between the PPP and the APNU in 2020 was just over 16,000 votes?
Those are the two questions. So every election we've had to face this sort of thing. People look at the ethnic demographics, migration. They say, oh, Indo-Guyanese have left the country, and therefore the PPP would lose the elections. APNU, I think that was their motive in destroying the sugar industry, hoping to drive particularly Indo-Guyanese out of the country to look for jobs abroad, so that it would change the electoral arithmetic. Now, we have defied all of this. We have overcome all of this. And it's not speculation. Look at the local government election results. So every party can speculate. I see people who call themselves analysts now who had never put together a campaign, never campaigned on the ground, don't have a clue about this analysis, has never seen a poll, all of which we have done, come up with some wild speculation about what the results would be. We examine these things carefully. We've examined them carefully. And so, if you look at the results across the country, you will see that the PPP now is probably stronger than it was ever before. And therefore, I have absolutely no worry about the elections. But we, as I said before several times, we do not take things for granted. So you're going to see us campaign just as hard as before. You're going to see us campaign harder than before. We will take on those who try to bring us down, and we will work with allies too, because there are lots of parties that want to throw their lot in with the PPP. And so this is clear. And if you go around the country, you'll get that feeling too. People know it on the ground. They know it. They're already planning beyond 2025 and beyond the elections. I've already seen that, planning beyond. So, but as I said before, we take things seriously. But this, we've heard this 100 times, Dennis. You've been around a long time too. Every election year, you get this. Oh, let's check there. Who migrated, who didn't migrate, etc. Usual stuff. Remember, 2020, APNU was in government and had a ton of, they spent $419.5 billion between the no confidence motion and elections. They had the reins of government, they had everything. And they lost the elections. And so we're not concerned about that. In terms of Melissa Atwell, I don't know if any government agency has been notified. It wouldn't come to me. If that has happened, it will go to the law enforcement agencies. So I saw this story today as I was coming here, and I don't know if it is true, because so many times you've heard a lot of rumors about this, and that somehow, you know, the PPP is to be blamed for this. So we have been made it known where we stand on this matter, but we don't every day obsess over Ms. Atwell. We don't obsess over Ms. Atwell. You're a social media commentator. There are many others, far more extreme than her, like a Rick Ford Burke. And we don't obsess about them. They have not made a iota of difference. And the fact is that people are moving away from this form of extremism. So I don't know whether the law enforcement agencies arrested her. I don't know what her position in the U.S. is, if she is a permanent resident or a citizen. I don't think she is a citizen, but I don't know. I don't really, at this stage, it doesn't make one difference to me, one way or another, whether she's over there or over here. And she's Guyanese too. If she has to come back, we welcome her back.
Going back to the numbers in elections, Mr. Jagdeo, what would you say to those people, even though you say they're being recycled and bossed around, for instance, in the Essequibo Coast? What will be your message to them?
Dennis, do you think any party is going to get 100% of the votes? at the elections?
I don't know. You tell me.
No. You think any party? The answer is clearly no. Only a stupid person would say a political party would get 100% of all the votes. So even if the BBP were to get 60% of the votes, you have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands that represent the other 40%. They have free choice. They have free choice, so they can go. Whether they want to go with APNU or switch from APNU to go to Mohammed, or they go from AFC. Well, AFC is nothing, so they can't go from AFC. They've already flattened. But to some other party. So do we have to answer for every person, particularly when they're PNC supporters? I know a lot of these people are PNC supporters. I've been on the ground seen them. If they migrate from one party to the next, it happens all the time. As though we have to account for every person, every voter out there, the PPP.
To win an election,
Yeah,
Mr. Jagdeo.
but we are accounting for enough votes to win the elections handsomely. Not for every voter. You cannot.
No, I wasn't asking you about every voter.
Norton to vote for the PPP.
I wasn't asking you that.
Actually, Norton might vote for the PPP. You remember Sharma? Sharma went into a polling place with 3 of his top leaders, and he came out with one vote from the polling place. So I don't run around behind, because I've seen what moves people to vote. You tell me, which political party would the sugar workers want to support? You tell me which political party. The party that destroyed them, so Ramjatan and Nigel Lewis went down there, destroyed them, lied to them, or or the party that has supported them. Now, you know, even with the PNC doing all they did with the sugar workers, you're gonna get maybe 300 sugar workers to still support them. So the fact is, you can't account for everyone. The rice farmers, who you think? You think the people are stupid? They don't know? On the ground, when they go to the polling place, they've seen it before. They saw what the industry was desolate. The same man who was telling Ramjatan and the others, the PPP got to get out of office. I saw some video him say, the PPP transformed this whole Blackbush polder here. The same man saying it because they know in the quiet moment. You put a camera in front of them, they say, yeah, they got to come out of the office. When voting time comes, they go to vote because they know. It's not because we're a party that don't talk about race. The people in Blackbush polder know about the changes. Road, water, electricity, the playgrounds, the support for the industry. They know it in their hearts. That's how people are rational being too. You think the miners, the bulk of the miners know that APNU practically destroyed the industry. The bulk of the miners, because APNU put, I don't want to release the taxes again, VAT on machinery and equipment. VAT, the royalty rate went up. The tributers tax went up. You had to bring out your vehicle from the interior to have it licensed. Imagine how you'd move your excavators out. If you were moving 1 drum of fuel, you had to get a license to go into the interior. Practically shut it down. You think the miners are stupid? They don't remember that? You think the bauxite workers, look at Kwakwani Aichuni. They encourage, with Lincoln Lewis and the others, Roussel and the others walk away from the operations up in the river. 1,000 people lost their jobs. So people are rational being too. The fact of the matter that anybody could go to a community and get a few people. Critic does get a lot of people when he goes to the community. They run around him all the time and stuff. You think they're going to vote for him? He has probably, Critic has a bigger following on Facebook maybe than most people. So the thing is that we have looked at the ground. People are rational beings. Look at the Amerindians. You think a couple of two shows who may be supportive, a few, and you would see differently at the election time. But some people, when they say, oh, I'm bringing in some basketball to your village or something like that, people will go and take the thing. But they know, if you go and talk to the Amerindian villages, they know they don't want APNU to ever come back into office because of what happened. They practically destroyed those villages in a phenomenal act of racism against those communities. They know who will protect them. It's the PPP. You think, as I said before, this as Rudy Mohammed could protect any one of them from APNU's excesses?
Give him so much attention if you don't see him as a threat.
Because they criticize the People's Progressive Party.
But so much attention, Mr. Jagdeo.
No, not so much attention. You're giving him attention.
No, I'm not.
You were worried every week. You had an analyst talk about how much votes he took away, not the PPP. That's why I'm saying it. The thing is that we take on people who come against us, whether they're the Mohammeds or anyone else. I give attention every week to Norton. Or you think we shouldn't go after Indian people? It's a racist thing. And we shouldn't go after Indian if they come against the PP. We must only go after...
I'm not here to discuss race, Mr. Jagdeo. I'm not here to discuss race.
Well, then that is it. So we go after anyone who misrepresents what the PPP stands for. I said that at the beginning. And these people recently have started doing that. And that is why we're taking them on. But, yes.
Dr. Jagdeo, Cordell Jones from Live Wire News. I'd just like to ask your thoughts. The AFC would have released a press statement about a meeting Nigel Hughes and Mr. Trotman would have had with the Mohammeds. Could you share your thoughts on that? And are you worried about the AFC receiving funding from this group for election purposes?
Well, I think I addressed that issue at the beginning. I don't know what was discussed at the meeting, but it looks fishy. It looks funny. You know, and sometimes people have to use their common sense. So if the meeting was about a purely legal one that Nigel Hughes represented to the public, this was about just a legal matter, why did you need the political or Trotman there to advise you on political matters? Based on his own words, Nigel Hughes said Trotman was there to advise him on political matters. So we don't know what was discussed there, but I would assume that he said, he used the word including. There were several issues, including the legal matters. I would assume that the conversation was about other things too, about politics. Because you don't go and meet just like that and say, oh, just we're here only to discuss a legal matter and have Trotman there. There was a claim that Trotman used to look out for the interests of different groups when APNU was there. APNU was there, so I don't know if that's his primary reason for being there, but it looks very fishy for me.
Finally, from me, in a credible sources post, they're claiming that the PPP is paying $50,000 US per month for Continental Strategies LLC to lobby the US government and president. Could you comment on this?
Yes, it's true. We've hired a lobbying firm. It's part of the filing in FARA. I think Starbuck News had an extensive story on that. They gave all the details of it. And it's accurate. And they pointed out too that it's critical that we have lobbying firms that particularly when we're confronted with this threat from Venezuela. So look, I have nothing to say. It was accurate. The report was very accurate. Right. Thank you very much.